All right, well, it is now. Crap.
Are you doing okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you already pay?
No.
Okay.
All right, well, sorry about that, guys. It looks like it wasn't recording that first half. All right, well, we're going to move on from here, and then if there are,
By the way,
we're definitely going to do a extra Q&A, and I will definitely find a way to make up for not only the sound quality of this, but the obviously the unsophisticated nature of it, because I want to make sure you guys get the best results possible. Are you guys getting value from what you've gotten so far? Hopefully the sound quality isn't too bad, but have the answers helped you guys? All right. Daryl says yes, so at least Daryl. At least Daryl thinks so. Okay. What is it? The sound quality, Brian, or is it something else? Okay. Yeah, it's something where the high-level strategy is something. Okay. It's something where the high-level strategy for the market awareness and sophistication is something that takes a while to pick up, and it takes a while to just practice over and over again. The more practice you get for different marketplaces, or different iterations of awareness and sophistication within your marketplace, the easier it's going to be. But that's why giving that level of general advice is something that I try to avoid, because it tends to confuse people more than it does help them. So let's give a really specific example on something that I can help you with specifically, whether it's the assignment that we're doing or it's something that you're working on personally for your business. Let's tackle that and then go from there. All right, Brian? So let me know if you have a specific question, right? And then I will try to answer that as well. But while Brian's typing or thinking about that, going over the levels of awareness and sophistication, think about it in terms of where the marketplace is, where, like Claude Hopkins calls it, Robert Collier calls it the conversation happening inside their head, the conversation currently happening in their head. What are they thinking? What are they saying? What are they doing that creates that conversation in their head? How are they using the language in their head? How are they defining their problems? All of that kind of stuff. Like, it's not necessarily about entering the conversation in their head with your own statement. It's about entering the conversation in their head with the language and ideas that they use. That's the key. So I think a lot of people get that wrong. They try and figure out what people are talking about and then go, hey, are you thinking about this? Then you need to think about my thing instead. It's not what Robert Collier was trying to say. And then once you've arrived at that conclusion, what are they currently saying and what are they currently aware of and how are they communicating with themselves and their friends, then you can also look at sophistication, because your competitors will be doing something to try and attract those customers. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's well done, sometimes it's poorly done. But understanding that will help you frame your message so that it's new, different, intriguing, and something that they're going to stay interested in for quite a while. So that's the general gist of how you start to frame your conversations. But again, very general, it's easier. So we can talk about the previous assignment. I know we're going to go over this in detail tomorrow at the hot seat. But the previous assignment was for a dog supplement a fish oil supplement for dogs that was not only natural, but came from salmon, which is a specific type of fish oil versus like krill or coming from more farmed type of fish. So it was a high-end natural fish oil supplement specifically created for dogs. And what that does is give you a very, very narrow product, very specific set of features and benefits to talk about with that product. But on top of that, you also have a market awareness that is higher, because the people who are natural buyers, people who are, you know, high quality buyers, tend to be more aware about the solutions that they want in general. And then you also have a very high level of market sophistication, because the supplement market, even the dog supplement market, is a very crowded and very savvy marketplace. Supplements, financial copy, health and fitness copy, business marketing, internet marketing, all those types of places usually have a very high level of sophistication, unless you have some sort of brand new product to bring out. So with that said, the previous product, when you're going to go at it, is something where you can turn to a book that I really, really love, and I highly recommend that everybody get, called Great Leads by Michael Masterson. Michael Masterson is the pen name for Mark Ford, and Mark Ford is the guy who not only helped Bill Bonner start Agora Financial, but also the guy who started the newsletter Early to Rise, which is a very big financial and health publisher. So the guy knows his stuff. The guy was an excellent copywriter, and he wrote a book called Great Leads that takes the concepts that Eugene Schwartz built into awareness and sophistication and takes those forward into the further levels of awareness and sophistication, the stuff where you need to be a little bit better of a copywriter to capture attention, and turns them into 6 specific types of leads that tend to capture attention. And they also correspond to around, you know, level 3 through 5 of awareness and sophistication. So go get Great Leads. It's an excellent book. I would highly recommend you read it, because I'm not going to repeat back everything in here. But once you go get Great Leads and read it and study it, it's one of those books that deserves study. Once you get that, you'll start to notice that perhaps with the grizzly thing, with the grizzly dog supplement, a story lead might be a better way to lead into a typical market level of sophistication, because the marketplace is tired of and used to claims, things where they say, you know, our supplement is the best, most natural, you know, fastest acting, whatever. All of those claims are tired, but a story is something that can capture people. Vlad, one of the old mentees, wrote an excellent story about a woman's dog that she absolutely loved, and told kind of a heart-wrenching story about what the dog was going through, but then they used the supplement and it was all better. So that type of story is something that will capture attention long enough for them to receive the benefit in your product, and then usually lead them to buy that product as is, simply because they relate to the story. There's other things, there's other different types of leads, but those tend to be very effective for further levels of sophistication. That's an example of what type of lead you can always look. I would highly recommend that if you're struggling with a higher level of sophistication, then you go to Great Leads, or you go to some of the swipe copy in your particular niche and look at what has worked in the past, and look at the levels of sophistication you're currently at, and start trying to emulate and model those ideas, as long as it hits the core primal desire and primal fear. Does that make sense, Brian? Okay, that's what I would recommend. You might be different than me, but you might be very similar to me. When I struggle with what I want to talk about, I typically go look at good copy in the same niche. That's my go-to. So if I'm struggling, if I don't know what I'm going to talk about the lead, or if I'm not going to do anything like that, if I don't find it in the research, and I'm on a deadline, I have to hit something, I'm going to go to the old swipe copy. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a trick, and since we are recording, hopefully this doesn't crash the darn thing because of how fast everything is. But I'm going to start to show my screen real quick. I'm going to show you my secret place where I go to find big ideas and hooks and angles for new, more sophisticated copies. So let me do that real quick. Let me know if you can see my screen. So you can see the screen. It should be on Google. Okay. All right, so the place where I go to find new big ideas is TED Talks. So TED Talks are a place where people go to prove how smart they are in their particular field, and to obviously gain the clout of having a TED Talk. But what the great thing is now this is public, and you can take their ideas and turn them into hooks and angles that people have already proven that they're going to see, or that they want to see. You can see the number of views, the number of shares, all that kind of stuff, so you can see how powerful that big idea is. If you are in a competitive industry, or if you're in a new industry, a technology industry, health, fitness, anything like that, TED is a great place to go and look for not only big ideas that have been validated, but also marketing ideas, marketing angles, marketing hooks. That's a great place to get started. So in the instance of the Grizzly supplement, we can look on TED and start to think, where do we go to find potential leads or hooks for Grizzly? Right now, this is mostly technology, performances, things like that. But if we look at topics, and we look, we won't go with agriculture, but we might go with health. Let's go with health specifically and not healthcare. We can look at what doctors worry about. We can look at what's wrong with what we eat, the future of medicine, all sorts of different stuff here. And then we start looking. Most of this is going to obviously be human health. But if you can find something interesting on fish oil, that might be a great hook for people. You can find something on how pets are good for people. That would be an interesting angle. And these are the little places that I find hidden ideas. Another great place to go if you have a very viral type offer or a new age, not necessarily new age spiritual, but new age in terms of like millennials or younger generations, things like that, then another great place to look is Reddit. Now, there is usually a Reddit for everything. Some Reddits are more vibrant and more active than others, and obviously it's a very millennial tech-savvy crowd. But with that said, a lot of stuff in here about people talking about their problems, talking about the things they want to see. The big idea is that they have this upvoting system where you can obviously look and see what people want to talk about versus not talk about. It shows you social proof of the idea. All of those are really great ways to go and find fodder, not only for your big idea, but for your angles and your hooks that you talk about in your copy, because most of the people aren't looking for what people are already talking about. They're trying to come up with something. But I agree with Eugene Schwartz in that big ideas are not created, they are found. So that's one of the things that I would want to bring up about this, where you go out, if you do the research, you should find enough right there to at least have a good place to start for your big idea and your angle and your hook. Does that make sense, Brian? And everybody else? Does that help everyone?
That's fine.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just because I don't trust the speed. And we are going to move on because I think that answered both Daryl's and Brian's question on nailing the lead. How to start writing. Sweet. So now, I know he's not on the call right now, but we're going to talk about Richard's question. And Richard actually asked a question about his own stuff, where he was trying to take the angle for his particular service around the big idea for what he's going to try and sell these people according to their primal pain and their primal desire and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things he was looking at was taking the concept of the Lost Ways, which is actually a survival VSL that's currently doing really well on ClickBank, and molding that into the big idea for his product for teaching gentlemen how to become gentlemen and attract the women that they want. So with that said, the reason that I commented that it wouldn't quite hit the pain is because there are different marketplaces and they're speaking to different types of people. So Richard, when you're listening to this, I'm going to elaborate a little bit on what I talked about in the first place. Since the Lost Ways is a survival-focused VSL, then they're going to be focusing on things like preparedness, things like anti-establishmentarianism, things like fear, and coming up with the essentially the scare tactics of being prepared for the apocalypse, being prepared to survive, being prepared to all this kind of stuff. Now that's a very fear-based, but also pride-based issue, but not in the same context of what you're trying to do with teaching men to be gentlemen. For a couple different reasons. The target market is going to be older for the Lost Ways, usually much older, in their 40s or 50s, potentially into their 60s for that particular type of stuff. And so they're obviously not going to be looking for the same things, and therefore all the stuff, that kind of concept is there. The biggest thing when you're dealing with slightly older demographic is that there's a sense of nostalgia that comes from the sales, or comes within the sales message. If you can tap into that nostalgia, then you build rapport with that particular demographic. The men that you would be speaking with, the 25-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, potentially the 35-year-olds, they're not quite nostalgic yet for anything. They don't quite have that attachment that the other VSL would have, and so they haven't really believed that they lost anything. They're not convinced that the old way of doing things is the best way of doing things, and so by appealing to them through this idea of the lost ways, there isn't really an attraction to those lost ways in terms of nostalgia. Now, with that said, there are some brands like Mr. Money Mustache and The Art of Manliness and some of these other brands that are trying to cultivate an old gentlemanly idea, not only for money or for fashion or for thriftiness, things like that, but just this general sense of trying to go back to an older, more sophisticated route. And if they have that older and more sophisticated route, it's not there because of nostalgia, but it's there because of a certain sense of identity. It's there because of a certain sense of self. And when we were talking about your stuff with the private conversation we had, we found out that their identity and their sense of self was a big part of why they were doing this, but that identity was not tied into being a gentleman yet. That the identity wasn't tied into being or wanting to be a gentleman. The identity is tied into not deserving or feeling like they deserve something that they aren't getting. And so that sense of lack of deservedness, that sense of need for appreciation. And so when we're looking at big ideas to model, when we're looking at old or different types of advertising to try and pull from, I would be wary of essentially trying to pick up the same feeling. I would be wary of nostalgia if it's a younger audience. I would be wary of pride if it's a sloth-based. It's one of those things where you have to look into the deeper reasons people are doing things before you use an old advertisement to model. A good example of actually, I can't off the top of my head think of a great example of when someone modeled something and it didn't work as well, but I should be able to find it for you just to kind of illustrate the point. But with that said, there is a certain amount of, I suppose, disrespect or a certain amount of disdain for within these guys, within your target market, for the lines and the techniques and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't think that's a driving factor. I think that the driving factor for them is that they almost like they aren't good enough. And that sense of not being good enough manifests itself in being disdainful towards things that they don't particularly want to do. They don't want to be identified with those types of activities. So if you tap into the idea of not being good enough, obviously that's not nostalgic, but that would definitely appeal in terms of the, like, hey, you don't feel good enough, and it's probably because you're not acting good enough, or you don't reflect your internal reality, or something to that effect, like we talked about. So by approaching it from that angle and then presenting the idea of becoming and transforming yourself into a gentleman as the solution, you don't necessarily lead with the gentleman, but you bring that up as the solution once you lead with the pain. And that's what I was trying to articulate, or be able to articulate, Richard. And I know you're probably going to have a lot of questions on that, and I'd be more than happy to speak about them specifically. But in a broad sense, that is what I would look for in terms of big ideas and looking inside the pain and the desires and the core needs for your particular marketplace. I think one of the big ideas that, and obviously we'd have to sit down and really talk about this specifically, or chat about this on the Facebook group. One of the big ideas that could appeal to your demographic is one level of sophistication beyond where your competitors are right now, in which case I believe your competitors would be at a stage 3 where they are trying to create a new mechanism for essentially the same product, where you're teaching men or or boys or whomever how to transform themselves and attract the women that they want. If that is something that they're trying to appeal to the one sec, guys. With that said, the big idea would appeal in a way that is much more forthright than your current competitors are, rather than appealing to a new mechanism of the intelligent introvert or the introverted badass, or these competitors, and they're trying to appeal to that. You can go with a much bigger, much more forceful, much more personality-focused attack on their level of deservedness or their feeling. And that would be something that would obviously polarize, but also potentially be a good big idea for your stuff. We can obviously discuss that in more detail if you want. But that is how I would attack those angles. And I know you're not on here to ask questions, and I'd be happy to communicate with you further on that. So let us. Is that helpful to everyone on the call? I like getting a little bit of feedback if I can. Check, check. See if everybody's paying attention. Probably not. It's all right. Actually, Edie, thank you. I did have a quick question, because I know that you personally are someone who is, how do I say it, a little bit more in touch with the I guess that world, or open to that particular that world and what Richard's talking about. So from your perspective, obviously coming from a feminine perspective, a woman's perspective, how would you interpret intuitively, what would you interpret is the need for his target market? Sorry if that was an unclear question. All right, I'll bring you on. All right, Edie, can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you. I actually haven't listened to his call.
Okay.
So I don't know quite what he's trying to do, what his target market is, aside from what you've just explained. Can you maybe give me a couple of details, and then I can sort of tune in and see if there's anything I could help with?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I believe Richard is attempting to help younger men, 25 to 35, transform themselves because they are not attracting the type of woman that they would like to date or eventually marry, or be in a long-term relationship with, and they feel that they're either attracting the wrong type of woman or they're not attracting any, obviously. And so
when I feel into that market, the 25 to 35 men, they're quite confused, I think, as to who they are, what kind of woman they should want. There's this sense of obviously wanting to go out and, let's just be honest, sleep with as many women as possible and get those numbers on the imaginary wall. And there's that other sense that's pulling of, okay, but I want to settle down. And so I'm scared of really settling down, because what that means is giving up my freedom. And so there's those two competing interests really going in. So when you were speaking, or he is wanting to sort of bring this at an angle of gentlemanly, I don't know whether that's going to work too much. My gut instinct is that it won't, in fact, and that you're better off at really sort of bringing up these two competing angles and calling to them and saying, what do you want? Like, what kind of life are you actually wanting for yourself down the track, and how are you going to track back to that? Like, what kind of man do you need to be for that kind of life that you're wanting to live? I don't know. Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, I think so. And obviously, Richard can also, reach out if he has
Yeah,
value for that.
absolutely. More than happy to help out anyone with that kind of stuff. That comes naturally. I just don't know how to put it in the marketing terms. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would actually tend to agree that there is that, those two polar opposite desires pulling.
Yeah.
With this particular market, especially.
Because it's really about the process of maturation, from a boy to a man, and maybe even spelling out what a boy would do and then what a man would do. Because I think what we've got to understand in that particular market and sense of maturity is that they want one thing, but they're not really prepared to do the groundwork in it most of the time. And they don't know what it takes to get there. Yeah.
I would also say from a male perspective that there's a certain sense of, at least most men, especially men who would be open to purchasing some sort of coaching or mentorship specifically, which is what Richard is trying to sell. Those types of men are seeking guidance. They're seeking a father figure. A lot of them do not have any relationship with their father or have an absent father. And they're seeking that level of guidance, but they're also pulling in terms of independence and freedom. And so any offer at all for that particular marketplace is going to have to juxtapose the idea of being a boy and running around and wanting to pick up bugs and have your freedom versus being a man, following guidance, getting mentorship, all that kind of stuff. So it will have to appeal to that.
And also you could talk about it in terms of the type of women that you attract based on your level of maturity, because and it's sort of like, if you are more immature, you're going to attract the type of woman who's naggy all the time and who's wanting to keep an eye on everything that you're doing, who has a sense of control, and doesn't let you sit comfortably as a man in your leadership and in your desire to take care and protect her. So really feeding into that angle of, well, what kind of relationship do you want? What kind of woman do you want? Because if you're wanting a woman who's going to, allow you to feel your own manhood and allow you to just explore what that even means for yourself without nagging at you all the time, without cramping your space, then you're going to have to be that man who is going to hold her and adore her and all of those things. Really tapping into the differences between a boy and a man and a girl and a woman and what those kind of relationships look like. Yeah.
And I think that also appeals to the type of person who he's trying to go for now versus, the PUA guys are not quite focused on that level of attainment yet. And so I think, Richard, when you're listening to the replay on here, that the interplay between boys and men, the interplay between, deciding what you want, going for it, being mature versus immature, all those things are fun ways to play around in, but also keep in mind that the target market is different from the pool community, and so they're not necessarily going to want the same things or desire the same things as that community, which is where you're coming from. And so maybe a little bit deeper market research into the type of men that you're currently working with, or the type of men who are working with your competitors, which it would be easy enough to find by going to a Facebook group or looking at email lists or pretending to be a prospect and seeing who else is there. That type of intimate research onto your target market will give you a better idea, and also might help you, like what Edie said in the very beginning, where she said that the angle might be wrong because the desire is not there. And if the desire is not there, then you're fighting upstream. There's no point to do that. The entire point would be to shift and pivot what you're actually offering to the right type of audience. And I think that would be the best.
Yeah.
Cool.
And just on that note, I'm available on hand to help with anything that I can, especially when it comes to tuning into competitors. If you've got someone specific that you want me to tune into, and like energetically, and what works for them, what doesn't work for them, I'm more than happy to jump on board, jump on calls.
Maybe it's like a transmission capture device for the Army. stealing their intel. All right. Thank you, Edie. I appreciate your insight.
Welcome.
Okay, guys. So it's 6:46 right now. I don't have any more questions to answer on Facebook thread. I don't have any questions to answer from anyone in here, to my knowledge. If you do have extra questions, please let me know. I will try to answer them. But if not, I hope you'll forgive me because I don't want to continue a long Q&A in an environment like this, just because there's really no point. And I also don't want to basically try to show you how I write a VSL, research a VSL, look for hooks and all that kind of stuff with a slow internet connection that's probably going to jump around and kick you off the call. So I'm doing my best here. I will be back at a place with faster internet tomorrow for the hot seat, and I'd be more than happy to do the VSL stuff live or in a recorded video or both. But I absolutely promise everyone here right now, thank you for being here late, but everyone who's listening to the replay at all, this is not typical, and you will absolutely get, I will make up for it in the best way possible that I can, and I appreciate your patience and your time. So, let's see. If anybody has any other questions, this is the time to ask. If not, I'm probably going to end it a little bit early. I will try to get the thing uploaded when I get back to faster internet, because the upload here won't do it tonight. And then I will obviously start to fulfill on a little bit more of the stuff that we talked about. So, any other questions this time? Going once. Going twice. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you again for your attention and time. I appreciate you being here. If you have any further issues or questions regarding the content, regarding the assignments, regarding anything in general, be it your own business, competitor's business, anything like that, please let me know in the Facebook group. I'll be extremely active once I get back to LA this weekend. And again, I appreciate your time, appreciate your patience, and I appreciate you guys working with us during our transition and our move. Me and Jessica will obviously make up the lapse to you, and I'm super excited for the next few weeks because we're about to get into some really cool stuff. So again, thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, and I will talk to you all tomorrow at the hot seat. Have a great one, guys.